The morning sun cast long shadows across the military training facility as Commander Jake Morrison watched the new recruit through his binoculars. The woman moved with precision that caught his attention immediately. Her name was Elena Vasquez, and she had just arrived from the Army's Special Operations training program. What struck him wasn't her military bearing or the way she carried herself with quiet confidence. It was the way she handled the Barrett .50 caliber sniper rifle. Jake had been a Navy SEAL for 15 years. He had seen countless soldiers come and go, each thinking they were the next great warrior. Most of them were decent fighters. Some were exceptional, but very few possessed that rare combination of skill, patience, and deadly accuracy that made a true sniper. As he watched Elena methodically clean and inspect every component of the massive rifle, something told him this woman was different. The Barrett .50 wasn't just any weapon. Weighing nearly 30 pounds and measuring over 4 feet in length, it was designed to engage targets at extreme distances. The rifle fired rounds that could penetrate armored vehicles and concrete barriers. In the right hands, it was capable of eliminating threats from distances that seemed impossible to most people. Jake had used one himself in Afghanistan, taking down enemy combatants from positions they thought were safe. Elena worked with the kind of methodical care that spoke of deep understanding. She didn't rush through the cleaning process like most soldiers eager to prove themselves. Instead, she took her time, examining each part with the attention of someone who understood that her life and the lives of her teammates would depend on this weapon functioning perfectly when the moment came. The other recruits had finished their weapon maintenance 20 minutes ago and were already moving on to their next training exercise. Elena remained at her station, still working. Jake could see some of the other soldiers exchanging glances and smirking. They probably thought she was slow or overly cautious. Jake knew better. He recognized the signs of someone who understood. That excellence came through attention to detail, not speed. As Elena worked, Jake noticed her hands. They were steady, never trembling or hesitating. Her movements were economical, wasting no motion. When she reassembled the rifle, each component clicked into place with the sound of perfect precision. She had done this hundreds of times before, and it showed. The military had changed significantly since Jake first enlisted. Women were now serving in combat roles that had been closed to them for decades. Some of the old-timers grumbled about it, but Jake had learned to judge soldiers by their capabilities, not their gender. He had served alongside female pilots who could put a helicopter down in impossible conditions, and female medics who had saved his life under enemy fire. If someone could do the job, he didn't care what they looked like. But watching Elena work stirred something in him that went beyond professional interest. There was something about her focus, her complete absorption in the task, that reminded him of the finest snipers he had known. The best ones weren't necessarily the strongest or the fastest. They were the most patient, the most disciplined, and the most precise. Elena finished her work and held the rifle up to the light, examining it one final time. Satisfied, she slung it across her back and began collecting her cleaning supplies. Jake decided it was time to introduce himself. He approached her station as she was packing away her kit. Up close, he could see she was probably in her late 20s, with dark hair pulled back in a regulation bun and intelligent brown eyes that missed nothing. There was a small scar on her left cheek that spoke of combat experience. "Good work with the Barrett," Jake said, keeping his tone casual. "Most people treat it like any other rifle." Elena looked up at him, taking in his commander's insignia and seal trident. "Thank you, sir. The .50 demands respect. It's not a weapon you can afford to have malfunction when you need it most." Her voice was calm and steady, with just a hint of a southwestern accent. Jake noticed she didn't seem intimidated by his rank or reputation, which was refreshing. Too many soldiers either tried too hard to impress him or were so nervous they could barely speak. "You have experience with long range shooting?" he asked. "Some, sir," Elena replied, her answer revealing nothing while confirming everything. Jake smiled. He liked soldiers who didn't feel the need to brag about their accomplishments. "I'm Commander Morrison. I oversee advanced sniper training here. I'd like to see you on the range tomorrow morning, 0600. "Yes, sir," Elena said, shouldering her rifle. Is there anything specific you'd like me to prepare for? Just bring your best, Jake said. We'll see what you can do at distance. As Elena walked away, Jake found himself watching her go. There was something about her that nagged at him, a feeling that he was missing something important. He had learned to trust his instincts over the years, and right now they were telling him that Elena Vasquez was more than she appeared to be. That evening, Jake pulled her service record from the system. What he found there was impressive but not extraordinary. Elena had served 2 tours in Iraq and 1 in Afghanistan. She had received commendations for marksmanship and had completed the Army's sniper school with high marks. Her psychological evaluation showed exceptional patience and stress tolerance. Nothing in the file suggested she was anything more than a competent soldier with good shooting skills. But Jake's instincts were still buzzing. Something about Elena didn't add up. The way she handled that Barrett suggested a level of familiarity that went beyond what her official record indicated. Tomorrow's range session would tell him more. As he closed the file, Jake found himself looking forward to the morning in a way he hadn't in months. Training new snipers had become routine, almost boring. But Elena Vasquez promised to be different, he just didn't know how different yet. The morning air was crisp and still as Jake arrived at the shooting range 30 minutes before the scheduled meeting. He preferred to be early, to observe how soldiers prepared when they thought no one was watching. Elena was already there, lying prone behind the firing line, studying the terrain through a spotting scope. The range stretched out for 2,000 meters, marked with targets at various distances. Most training was conducted at 600 to 800 meters, distances considered challenging for military snipers. Jake had set up targets at 1,200 meters for this morning's test, distances that would challenge even experienced marksmen. Elena looked up as Jake approached. She had changed from her standard uniform into specialized shooting gear. Her rifle was already set up on its bipod, and Jake could see she had made adjustments to the scope and other components. Everything about her setup spoke of someone who understood the weapon system intimately. "Good morning, sir," Elena said, rising to her feet. "I took the liberty of studying the range and wind conditions. The breeze is light and variable, coming primarily from the southwest." Jake nodded, impressed that she had already begun her environmental assessment. Reading wind conditions was crucial for long-distance shooting, and many soldiers overlooked this fundamental skill. "What's your assessment of the targets at 1,200 meters?" Jake asked. Elena glanced downrange. "Challenging but manageable, sir. The mirage is minimal this early in the morning. Wind drift will be the primary factor to account for." Jake pulled out his own spotting scope and set it up beside Elena's position. "Show me what you can do," he said simply. Elena settled back into her shooting position with fluid grace. Jake watched her breathing pattern slow and become more controlled. She pressed her cheek against the rifle's stock and aligned her eye with the scope. For several long moments she remained perfectly still, reading the wind indicators downrange. The first shot broke the morning silence with a thunderous crack. Jake immediately shifted to his spotting scope to see the impact. The bullet had struck dead center on the target, a perfect bullseye at 1,200 meters. "Good shot," Jake said, though internally he was more than impressed. Hitting center mass at that distance on the first attempt was exceptional shooting. Elena didn't respond. She was already working the bolt action, chambering another round. Jake realized she was treating this as a string of shots, not individual attempts. This showed understanding of real-world applications where snipers rarely got just one chance. The second shot followed 30 seconds later. Another perfect center hit. Jake felt his pulse quicken. 2 perfect shots could be luck. But as Elena continued, shot after shot finding the exact same point of impact, Jake realized he was witnessing something extraordinary. By the 10th shot, Jake was certain he was watching one of the finest displays of marksmanship he had ever seen. Elena wasn't just hitting the target, she was placing every round within a group that could be covered by a silver dollar. At 1,200 meters, this level of precision was almost unheard of. "Impressive," Jake said when Elena finally cleared her weapon. "I'd like to try something different." He walked to his vehicle and returned with a tablet computer displaying satellite imagery. This is a simulation of a real-world scenario we encountered in Afghanistan. Multiple targets at varying distances, some moving, some stationary. Time, pressure, and civilian considerations. Elena studied the screen intently. Jake watched her eyes move across the terrain, calculating angles and distances. After several minutes, she looked up. "How much time do I have to engage?" "The scenario plays out over 45 minutes, Jake explained. "You'll have to prioritize targets based on threat assessment and available shots." What followed was unlike anything Jake had experienced in 20 years of military service. Elena transformed the shooting exercise into a tactical masterpiece. She identified high-value targets, calculated the sequence of engagements to minimize civilian risk, and executed each shot with mechanical precision. But it was her understanding of advanced ballistics that truly amazed Jake. Elena compensated, not just for wind and distance, but for temperature variations, barometric pressure changes, and even the Coriolis effect caused by the Earth's rotation. These were calculations that most snipers learned about but rarely applied with such accuracy. During one particularly challenging sequence, Elena had to engage a moving target at nearly 1,500 meters, while accounting for a crosswind that was shifting direction every few seconds. She waited patiently for nearly 10 minutes, studying the wind patterns until she identified a brief window of stability. When she fired, the bullet traveled for almost 3 seconds before finding its mark. "Where did you learn to shoot like that?" Jake asked when the exercise concluded. Elena was cleaning her rifle again, the same methodical process he had observed the day before. "My father was a competitive shooter, sir. He taught me the fundamentals when I was young. The military refined those skills." Jake sensed there was more to the story, but he didn't push. Military personnel often had backgrounds they preferred not to discuss in detail. What mattered was capability, and Elena had just demonstrated capabilities that exceeded anything in her official record. As they packed up the equipment, Jake made a decision that would change both their careers. "I'm recommending you for advanced training," he said. "There's a program that might interest you." Elena paused in her cleaning routine. "What kind of program, sir?" "The kind where your skills would be put to their fullest use," Jake replied carefully. "Long-range reconnaissance and elimination. High-value targets, the missions that require absolute precision." For the first time since he had met her, Elena smiled. It wasn't a happy smile exactly, but one of recognition and anticipation. "I'd be honored, sir." That afternoon, Jake submitted a classified report recommending Elena for immediate transfer to the military's most elite sniper program. In his evaluation, he wrote that she possessed skills that exceeded standard military training and should be fast-tracked for special operations. What Jake didn't know was that Elena's true shooting record was buried in classified files so deep that even his security clearance couldn't access them. Her longest confirmed kill was recorded at 3,247 meters, a shot made during a black operations mission that officially never happened. Elena knew her secret was safe for now, but she also knew that exceptional skills eventually drew attention. As she prepared for whatever challenges lay ahead, she wondered if she was ready for the world to discover what she was truly capable of. 3 weeks after the range demonstration, Jake found himself in a secure briefing room at the Pentagon. The man sitting across from him wore civilian clothes, but Jake recognized the bearing of someone who had spent decades in special operations. Colonel Marcus Reed had called this meeting, and Jake suspected it had everything to do with Elena Vasquez. "Your report on Sergeant Vasquez made quite an impression," Reed said, sliding a classified folder across the table. "Tell me about her performance in your own words." Jake chose his words carefully. In the military, recommending someone for advanced programs meant putting your own reputation on the line. "She's the most naturally gifted marksman I've encountered. In 15 years of service, her technical knowledge is exceptional, and her fieldcraft suggests experience beyond what her record indicates." Reed nodded slowly. "What if I told you that Sergeant Vasquez has already been through our most advanced programs? That she's been operating at the highest classification levels for the past 3 years?" Jake felt a chill run down his spine. He had suspected Elena was more than she appeared, but this revelation changed everything. "Then I'd ask why she was sent to my basic training program." Because we needed an outside assessment, Reed explained. Someone with your experience and reputation to confirm what we already knew. Elena Vasquez isn't just an exceptional sniper. She may be the most capable long-range elimination specialist in the world. Reed opened the folder, revealing photographs and documents that made Jake's breath catch. The images showed elimination shots from distances that seemed impossible. Urban environments, mountain terrain, desert conditions. Each photograph was marked with range calculations that exceeded anything Jake had thought possible. Her longest confirmed elimination was made 18 months ago in Afghanistan, Reed continued. A high-value target coordinating attacks against coalition forces. The shot was made from a concealed position at 3,247 meters. The target never knew what hit him. Jake stared at the documentation. 3,247 meters. Over 2 miles. At that distance, the bullet would have been in flight for nearly 8 seconds, traveling through changing atmospheric conditions and multiple wind layers. The precision required was almost superhuman. How is that possible? Jake asked. Exceptional. Natural ability, combined with training that goes beyond anything in our standard programs, Reed said. Elena has been working with our most advanced ballistics computers and atmospheric modeling systems. She's helped develop techniques that are classified at the highest levels. Reed pulled out another photograph, this one showing Elena in full, ghillie suit, almost invisible against a rocky terrain. This was taken during the mission where she made that 3,247-meter shot. She remained in position for 62 hours, waiting for the perfect opportunity. Most snipers would have given up after 12 hours. Jake studied the image, trying to spot Elena in the camouflaged position. It took him several minutes to locate her, even knowing approximately where to look. Her concealment skills were as exceptional as her marksmanship. Why reveal this to me now? Jake asked. Because we have a mission that requires both your tactical expertise and her unique capabilities, Reed said. A target that conventional approaches can't reach. Someone who needs to be eliminated from a distance that pushes the boundaries of what's possible. Reed activated a wall display showing satellite imagery of a compound in a remote mountain region. This is the headquarters of Viktor Kozlov, an arms dealer who's been supplying advanced weapons to terrorist organizations. He's responsible for attacks that have killed hundreds of civilians, including American citizens. Jake studied the imagery. The compound was built into a mountainside, with natural barriers and defensive positions that would make conventional assault nearly impossible. The only clear lines of sight were from extreme distances across a valley. Traditional military approaches would require significant resources and would likely result in heavy casualties, Reed continued. Airstrikes are not possible due to civilian populations in the area. Our only viable option is a single, precisely placed shot from maximum range. Jake began to understand. You need Elena to make an elimination shot from the far side of that valley. The calculations show it would be approximately 300-400 meters, Reed confirmed, beyond anything that's been attempted in combat conditions. But our modeling suggests it's possible with the right shooter under optimal conditions. Jake felt the weight of what was being asked. This wasn't just another military operation. This was pushing the boundaries of what was humanly possible in combat conditions. What's my role in this? Jake asked. You'll be her spotter and team leader, Reed explained. Your job is to get her into position, provide environmental assessment, and ensure mission success. Elena is the trigger puller, but she'll need your tactical expertise to make it work. Reed pulled out a timeline showing moon phases and weather projections. We have a narrow window in 6 weeks when atmospheric conditions will be optimal. Elena is already in advanced preparation, working with our best ballistics specialists to refine the calculations. Jake studied the mission parameters. Getting into position would require infiltrating through hostile territory and establishing a concealed firing position that could remain undetected for potentially days. The logistics alone were staggering. Has she been briefed on the target? Distance? Jake asked. She requested the specifications yesterday, Reed said with a slight smile. Her response was to ask for additional training time with the new ammunition loads we've developed specifically for extreme range work. Jake wasn't surprised by Elena's reaction. In the brief time he had known her, She had consistently demonstrated a calm professionalism that never wavered regardless of the challenge presented. "I'll need complete tactical authority in the field," Jake said. "If I'm responsible for mission success, I need to be able to make real-time decisions without consulting headquarters." "Understood and approved," Reed said. "This mission is classified at the highest levels. Success or failure, it never happened officially." As Jake left the Pentagon that evening, he found himself both excited and concerned about what lay ahead. He had been part of challenging missions before, but nothing that pushed the limits of possibility like this. Elena's capabilities were clearly extraordinary, but even extraordinary had limits. The question that haunted him as he drove home was simple. Could anyone, even someone with Elena's exceptional skills, consistently make precision shots at distances where the slightest miscalculation meant mission failure? In 6 weeks he would find out. The specialized training facility in Nevada was unlike anything Jake had seen in his military career. Hidden in a valley surrounded by mountains that provided natural security, the complex contained some of the most advanced ballistics research equipment in the world. Elena had been here for 2 weeks when Jake arrived, working with scientists and engineers to prepare for what many considered an impossible shot. Dr. Sarah Chen, the facility's lead ballistics researcher, briefed Jake on Elena's progress. "She's been working 16-hour days, testing different ammunition configurations and refining her environmental assessment techniques," Chen explained as they walked through the laboratory. "Her dedication is remarkable, but more importantly, her intuitive understanding of advanced ballistics is beyond anything I've encountered." Jake watched through a window as Elena worked with the computer simulation system. Multiple monitors displayed wind patterns, temperature gradients, and atmospheric pressure readings from the target area. Elena studied the data with intense concentration, occasionally making notes or adjusting parameters. "The challenge isn't just the distance," Chen continued. "At 3,400 meters, we're dealing with bullet flight times approaching 9 seconds. During that time, atmospheric conditions can change significantly. Elena needs to predict not just current conditions, but what they'll be when the bullet reaches the target." Jake joined Elena at the simulation station. Up close, he could see the complexity of what she was analyzing. The computer models showed wind patterns at different altitudes, temperature variations across the valley, and even the effect of thermal updrafts from sun-heated rocks. "How accurate are these simulations?" Jake asked. Elena looked up from the monitors. "They're good for establishing baseline parameters, but real-world conditions are always more complex. I've been working on developing instinctive responses to subtle environmental cues that the computers can't measure." Over the following days, Jake watched Elena push herself through training regimens that tested every aspect of her abilities. She spent hours in environmental chambers that replicated the temperature and humidity conditions of the target area. She practiced breathing techniques that would allow her to remain steady during the extended time required for such a long shot. The weapon system Elena would use was a modified version of the Barrett 50, enhanced with experimental components that pushed the rifle's capabilities to new limits. The scope was a prototype that incorporated laser rangefinding and atmospheric sensors. The ammunition was custom manufactured with tolerances measured in thousandths of an inch. "The rifle is capable of the accuracy we need," Elena explained to Jake during one of their training sessions. "The challenge is eliminating all human variables. At this distance, a heartbeat can throw off the shot." Jake was impressed by Elena's systematic approach to mastering every aspect of the challenge. She studied meteorology to better understand how atmospheric conditions affected bullet flight. She worked with sports psychologists to develop mental techniques for maintaining focus during extended periods of stress. She even consulted with meditation experts to refine her breathing and heart rate control. The most challenging aspect of preparation was developing the infiltration and extraction plan. The target area was in hostile territory, requiring a covert approach through mountain terrain that would test even experienced special operations personnel. Jake spent countless hours studying satellite imagery and intelligence reports, mapping routes that would get them into position undetected. "We'll need to be in place 48 hours before the scheduled engagement," Jake explained to Elena during a mission planning session. "That's 2 days of remaining concealed in enemy territory, maintaining equipment and waiting for optimal conditions. Elena nodded, studying the topographical map spread across the table. The longer we're in position, the greater the risk of detection. But we'll need that time to establish precise environmental baseline measurements. The psychological pressure of the mission was something both Jake and Elena had to prepare for. Making a precision shot at extreme range required absolute confidence and mental clarity. Doubt or second-guessing could be fatal, not just to mission success but potentially to their survival if the shot revealed their position to enemy forces. During their final week of preparation, Jake and Elena practiced together as a team. Jake learned to read atmospheric conditions and provide environmental data that Elena could use to refine her calculations. Elena learned to trust Jake's tactical assessments and follow his guidance on timing and security considerations. Their partnership developed a rhythm that reminded Jake of his best SEAL team operations. Communication became minimal and intuitive. Elena would glance at Jake and immediately understand whether conditions were favorable for the shot. Jake learned to read Elena's body language and know when she was ready to engage. The night before their deployment, Jake found Elena on the facility's observation deck studying the stars. The clear desert air provided visibility that stretched for miles in every direction. "Having second thoughts?" Jake asked, joining her at the railing. "Just thinking about variables I might not have considered," Elena replied. "In training, we can control most factors. In the field, there are always unknowns." Jake understood her concern. He had felt similar doubts before every major mission. "Your preparation has been more thorough than anything I've witnessed. Trust your training and your instincts." Elena was quiet for several moments before speaking again. "That 3,047-meter shot in Afghanistan wasn't my first at extreme range. It was my 15th. The previous 14 attempts taught me that preparation only gets you so far. At some point, you have to trust that all the variables will align and take the shot." Jake realized Elena was sharing something she had never discussed with anyone else. "What happened with those first 14 attempts?" "Various degrees of failure," Elena said simply. "Missed targets, delayed shots, compromised positions. Each failure taught me something important about the limitations of both equipment and human capability." The honesty of her response impressed Jake. Many soldiers would have claimed perfect success records. Elena's willingness to acknowledge and learn from failure showed the kind of mature professionalism that true expertise required. As they prepared for sleep before their early morning deployment, Jake felt confident in their chances of success. Elena's capabilities were extraordinary, their preparation had been exhaustive, and their teamwork had developed to a level that allowed for near telepathic communication. What neither of them could have anticipated was how the mission would test, not just their professional skills, but the very limits of human performance under conditions that pushed beyond anything either had experienced before. The infiltration began at 200 hours on a moonless night that provided perfect concealment for their approach. Jake and Elena moved through the mountain terrain like ghosts, their movements synchronized and silent. Years of training had taught them to navigate by touch and instinct, avoiding obstacles that could create noise or dislodge loose rocks. Elena carried the modified Barrett 50 in a specialized pack that distributed its weight across her frame. The rifle had been broken down into components for easier transport, but even disassembled, the weapon system weighed nearly 40 pounds. Additional equipment, ammunition, and survival supplies brought their total load to over 80 pounds each. The route Jake had planned took them through a series of ridgelines and valleys that avoided known patrol areas and observation points. Intelligence reports indicated minimal enemy activity along their path, but both Jake and Elena remained alert for signs of unexpected threats. By dawn, they had covered 12 kilometers and reached their primary observation point. From this position, they could see across the valley to the target compound, a distance their laser rangefinder confirmed at 3,387 meters. Elena immediately began environmental assessment while Jake established their defensive perimeter. The target compound was exactly as the satellite imagery had indicated. Viktor Kozlov's headquarters was built into the mountainside, with the main Building constructed of reinforced concrete and natural stone, multiple guard positions were visible, along with communication equipment and what appeared to be vehicle staging areas. Elena assembled her rifle with practiced efficiency, each component clicking into place with mechanical precision. The specialized scope required careful calibration to account for the extreme range and environmental conditions. Jake watched her work, impressed by her calm focus despite the magnitude of what lay ahead. Wind is variable between 8 and 12 knots from the southwest, Elena reported quietly. Temperature differential across the valley is approximately 15 degrees. Barometric pressure is stable. Jake recorded the environmental data and began calculating the ballistic solution. At 3,187 meters, the bullet would drop nearly 30 feet during its flight and would be affected by wind drift that could measure in yards rather than inches. The complexity of the calculations required both computer modeling and intuitive understanding of ballistics. They had positioned themselves in a natural rock formation that provided concealment while offering a clear line of sight to the target area. Elena's ghillie suit made her virtually invisible against the rocky background. Jake established observation positions that allowed him to monitor both the target area and potential approach routes that enemies might use to reach their position. The waiting began immediately. Intelligence indicated that Kozlov typically appeared in the compound's main courtyard during the late afternoon, conducting daily briefings with his subordinates. This routine provided their best opportunity for a clear shot, but it meant remaining in position for nearly 10 hours. Elena settled into her shooting position and began the mental discipline required for extended surveillance. Jake had seen snipers struggle with the psychological pressure of waiting for the perfect shot, but Elena demonstrated the patience of someone completely comfortable with the demands of their profession. Throughout the morning, Jake observed activity in the compound through his spotting scope. Guards maintained regular patrols, vehicles came and went, and various personnel moved between buildings. The facility appeared to operate on a strict schedule that matched their intelligence briefings. At 1300 hours, Elena requested a communications check. Environmental conditions are shifting, she reported. Wind patterns are becoming more consistent and thermal gradients are stabilizing. Conditions should be optimal between 1600 and 1630 hours. Jake confirmed her assessment and prepared for the final phase of their mission. The next 3 hours would determine whether months of preparation would result in mission success or failure. At 1545 hours, Jake spotted movement in the compound's main courtyard. Several figures emerged from the primary building, and Jake immediately recognized Viktor Kozlov from their target photographs. The arms dealer was conducting his daily briefing exactly as intelligence had predicted. Target is in position, Jake whispered into his microphone. Range confirmed at 3,187 meters. Wind conditions are optimal. Elena had been tracking the target through her scope for several minutes, waiting for Kozlov to move to a position that offered a clear shot. The compound's layout included several obstacles that could interfere with bullet trajectory, requiring patience until the target moved to an open area. I have target acquisition, Elena confirmed. Awaiting optimal positioning. Jake watched through his spotting scope as Kozlov moved through the courtyard, occasionally stopping to speak with subordinates. Each pause represented a potential opportunity, but Elena waited for the perfect combination of clear sight lines and environmental conditions. At 1607 hours, Kozlov moved to the center of the courtyard and paused to examine some documents. Elena's breathing slowed and became more controlled. Jake could see her finger move to the trigger, applying the gradual pressure required for precision shooting. Wind is steady at 10 knots southwest, Jake whispered. No thermal disruption. Target is stationary. Elena's rifle fired with a sound like thunder echoing off the mountain walls. Jake immediately shifted his spotting scope to track the bullet's flight path, though at this distance and velocity, the projectile was invisible to the naked eye. For nearly 9 seconds, time seemed suspended. Jake kept his scope focused on the target area, watching for impact. Elena remained motionless behind her rifle, maintaining perfect shooting position until the bullet reached its destination. The impact was visible as a small puff of dust and debris. Jake saw Kozlov drop immediately, the precision of Elena's shot, confirmed by the target's complete lack of movement. Mission success was instantaneous and absolute. Target down, Jake confirmed. Clean elimination, immediate extraction authorized. Elena was already breaking down her rifle, her movements efficient and automatic. Guards in the compound were running toward their fallen leader, but their focus was entirely on the target area. Jake's route planning had positioned them outside, the enemy's probable response patterns. Within 15 minutes, they had packed their equipment and begun moving toward their extraction point. The compound behind them was in chaos, but their concealed position had remained undetected. Elena had achieved what many considered impossible, making a precision elimination shot at a distance that pushed the boundaries of human capability. As they moved through the mountain terrain toward their rendezvous point, Jake found himself amazed by what he had witnessed. Elena's 3,387-meter shot had been executed with a precision that seemed almost supernatural. But more impressive than the technical achievement was her complete professionalism under pressure that would have broken most people. The mission that many had considered impossible was complete, but Jake knew that Elena's extraordinary capabilities would ensure this would not be her last assignment at the limits of human performance. 6 months after the successful elimination of Viktor Kozlov, Jake found himself back at the Pentagon in another secure briefing room. This time, the atmosphere was different. Colonel Reed sat across from him with a satisfied expression, along with 2 other officials Jake didn't recognize. On the table was a thick folder marked with classifications so high that Jake needed special clearance just to be in the room. The Kozlov mission exceeded all expectations, Reed began. Intelligence indicates his elimination disrupted weapons trafficking operations across 3 continents. Elena's precision prevented a war that could have claimed thousands of lives. Jake nodded, remembering the flawless execution of that impossible shot. Elena's 3,387-meter elimination had been talked about in whispers among the special operations community, though officially it had never happened. What you don't know, Reed continued, opening the classified folder, is that Elena Vasquez doesn't exist. Jake felt the ground shift beneath him. What do you mean? One of the unknown officials leaned forward. The woman you know as Elena Vasquez is actually Captain Maria Santos, formerly of the Army's most classified Special Operations Unit. Her real record includes 43 confirmed long-range eliminations, many at distances previously thought impossible. Jake stared at the photographs and documents being spread across the table. The images showed the woman he knew as Elena in various operational environments, but the name and background were completely different. Her longest confirmed shot wasn't 3,247 meters as Reed had told him months earlier. It was 3,191 meters, made during a classified operation in Syria. Why the false identity? Jake asked. Because Captain Santos had become too well known in certain circles, the second official explained. Her capabilities had attracted attention from foreign intelligence services and criminal organizations who wanted either to recruit her or eliminate her. Elena Vasquez was a new identity that allowed her to continue operating while maintaining security. Reed slid another document across the table. What we're about to tell you is classified at the highest levels. Maria Santos isn't just an exceptional sniper. She's the result of an experimental training program that pushed human capabilities to their absolute limits. Jake studied the document, which described training methods that seemed more like science fiction than military reality. Sensory enhancement, techniques, advanced ballistics modeling, psychological conditioning that allowed for unprecedented focus and stress tolerance. She volunteered for the program 8 years ago, Reed continued. The training nearly killed her twice, but it also transformed her into something beyond normal human capability. She can make calculations in her head that require computers for most people. She can remain